Hi, and as always, thank you for tuning in to Love's Child. I'm Christopher Lakeith.
And I'm Tariq.
As we suggested and stated in the beginning of our episodes, we were going to bring you the latest in educational stories, empowering stories, and stories of entertainment. Today's topic is depression. I want to forewarn parents that the topic is very controversial in some cases, and it's also it's touchy in regarding minors watching it. So we're asking that you monitor your children because we don't want to give them the wrong impression. The reason why we chose to do depression is because, first of all, I am studying mental health counseling. I'm getting my second master's in mental health counseling. And one of the things I recognize is that many of us suffer from some sort of mental disorder. And what I like to do is I like to, I guess, basically do away with the stigma that's attached to mental illness, specifically depression, but also other forms of mental illness as well, from schizophrenia to bipolar disorder. It's a lot of misperceptions and misconceptions about what bipolar disorder is. So my hope is through this show that you all can gain a better understanding of mental disorders and specifically to depression. Now, what led me to, or what inspired me to do this show is a few weeks ago, I was looking through my photo album and I ran across a letter from an old friend of mine. It was an ex-girlfriend of mine way back when I was in high school. And she wrote a letter to me. As I was reading the letter, I came to the last page, and the contents of the letter, or that part of the letter, surprised me. Now, this is new to Tariq because what I'm about to share with you all, I haven't even shared with him, and he and I have known each other for 7 years. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the very last page. Actually, it's only one sentence, or a couple sentences that she says, and I'm not going to disclose her name, but this is what she says. She says, "Chris, I have a couple of questions to ask. Please answer only the ones you want, if any. Why did you try to kill yourself when you had returned home from living with your dad a while?" And there's some other things that she asks and she talks about, but it's not related to this topic. And what she was referring to, when I was 16, I lived with my dad. Actually, I was 15 and turned 16. I lived with my dad in Washington, D.C. When I returned from D.C., I moved back to Toledo, Ohio, where, as I said, I'm originally from. And what transpired was I was staying with my paternal aunt, my dad's sister at the time. And I think when I look back over my life, I think to some degree I've always suffered from depression. And this is how I phrase my form of depression. I'm one of those persons who I believe is what I call a functionally depressed person. And what I mean by that is I don't know if you ever heard of the term a functionally alcoholic, but a functionally alcoholic is, you know, that's you. So a functionally alcoholic is an alcoholic who goes about his everyday life. He handles his responsibilities or her responsibilities as if he is not or she is not an alcoholic. So they pay the bill, they pay their bills, they go to work, they just function in everyday life without people necessarily knowing, or people outside of their family knowing, and even possibly their friends knowing that they are in fact chemically dependent to alcohol. So the way I kind of like just see my depression is that most persons wouldn't know that, you know, I suffer from what I believe to be depression. And in part is because I have such an upbeat kind of like personality. I'm always laughing, always smiling, but there's an underlying feeling within me, like, and in part is because of my circumstances presently as well as in past situations, and they've dictated my mindset, if you will. So at this time, when I was 16, my mother was chemically dependent to crack cocaine, as was her 5 sisters and her brother. My father, he and I had a strange relationship, so it wasn't the healthiest of relationships, and I was living with my maternal grandmother at the time, and she was the matriarch of our family, and so she tried to keep everything together, as most grandmothers in black families do. Well, in addition to that, because she raised me from the time I was 11 until I was an adult, 18 years of age, I kind of took on a lot of her characteristics as being caring and nurturing and all that. And my family's addictive habits and their problems in their relationships affected me, and I became depressed because of what was going on in their lives. And also at the same time, although this wasn't necessarily an issue for me, I was also coming to terms or grips with my own sexual orientation. So at this time, when all of this stuff was going on, I had a conversation with my dad. My dad didn't want me over to his sister's house, which is my Aunt Julia's house, and he said that I should go over to my maternal grandmother's house and worry her, if you will, is what he said to me. And I don't know that I was necessarily hurt by what he said, but I was definitely upset by what he said. And one of the ways that I've always dealt with my anger or my depression is by being silly, being jovial and joking around and all that. So I had gone to my cousin, she's my female cousin, also my best friend, and I had joked with her, and she was kind of like in a bad space and kind of irritated by my playfulness, and so she said some things to scold me. Well, her scolding, are you listening?
Why you say that?
Because you zoned out.
No, I'm listening.
So her scolding hurt my feelings. I've always been very, very sensitive, and most people don't believe that because, I guess because of the way I carry myself. But her scolding hurt my feelings, and I left. I went over to my grandmother's house, got some ibuprofen, a bottle of ibuprofen, and I went back over to my Aunt Julia's house, went upstairs into my cousin's bedroom, and I made a plan to take so many pills at a time until they were all gone. And I think I must have started off with like maybe 6 or 7 pills or so, and then I said that I would gradually taper off to like 2 pills like every 5 minutes or whatever.
So, I mean, okay, you say you were 16 and you did the typical overdose of pills. What do you think, why that? Like, is that a popular choice of people who want it? I mean, it's something that we see on TV. I mean, have you seen somebody in your family? Why the pill situation? Because it seems, you know, very popular.
It's 2 reasons. First of all, I was, which is what I was about to say, is I never really wanted to die. That wasn't my plan. I wasn't trying to kill myself per se. And I know this sounds bizarre. This is the reason why I was saying that I'm hoping that parents, if your children are watching, that you monitor their behavior, because I don't want them to listen to my story and then try to do the same things that I did. But the reason what I did was I was trying to prove something to myself. And I had always felt from the age of like easily 4 or 5 years old that God had chosen me for a special purpose. I felt that in my spirit when I was a young child. But I couldn't understand in an adolescent's mind why I was going through all the things that I was going through, or if I was in fact special, if he had a special purpose for me, why I couldn't help my mother get off drugs, why I couldn't help my Aunt Tina, my Aunt Darlene, my Aunt Lois, and my uncle, why I couldn't be of assistance to those persons. So I was asking God, and this is as God is my witness, before I took the pills, I said a prayer, and I said, God, reveal yourself to me. Let me know that what I believe to be in my spirit is in fact the truth. So I took the pills. I didn't take the whole bottle. I took like maybe half the bottle, which is still significant, especially for a 16-year-old child. And then I stopped taking them, and I had no effect. I went downstairs at my Aunt Julia's house, told my cousin Kel. I told her not to say anything, but she told her mother, Aunt Julia, who was a nurse, and Aunt Julia told me to go upstairs, to go to the bathroom, and so she told me to stick my finger down my throat so that I could vomit the pills up. Well, I did what she told me to do, but nothing came up. So she called, I think she called my dad first, but I know she definitely called the hospital, the 911, whomever, and she told them what had transpired and that nothing had come up. So apparently it had already dissolved into my system. The medication or the pills were already in my system. I really don't remember the events after that, but I know I didn't go to the hospital, and I know I didn't suffer any kind of ramifications behind my foolish behavior. And again, I'm saying, please understand me. If you have children, or if you yourself is in a depressed state, do not listen to my story and try to do the same foolish things that I did. It was foolish of me to take the pills. It was foolish of me to test God, if you will.
So you think you did it out of depression? You decided to take the pills to prove what, though? You said to prove something. For God, that was...
I wanted him to show me that I was, in fact, called to do something. Because I had always felt like I was put on earth to fulfill a special purpose. And so I wanted him to show me that in fact I was special, that what I believed in my spirit was in fact the case. And I guess in a twisted kind of way, he did show that to me, because I didn't have, generally speaking, when a person takes as many pills, ibuprofen, Tylenol, or whatever, what happens is the body shuts down. The liver, the kidney, all that stuff shuts down, and the person eventually dies if their stomach isn't pumped prior to then. Apparently, my body had already metabolized the pills, and it was already in my bloodstream, but it did nothing to me. I suffered absolutely no ramifications or consequences behind having taken the pills. So
what's like signs of depression? Like, because one of my things about depression, I feel like a lot of people can deal with it or be able to recognize it or deal with it or come up with a solution if they actually knew that they were actually going through it. I feel like most people don't even know they're suffering from depression. So in your eyes, I mean, I know we're not medically.
I am being trained in mental health.
You are being trained in mental health. So I mean, so for people out there, so they can know what depression is. Like, what is depression?
There are a lot of symptoms of depression. I did, although I'm, as I said, getting this master's degree in mental health counseling. My minor is in psychology, and then the other master's that I have is in criminal justice, but the specification is criminal behavior, which is latent in psychology. I'm saying all that to say this, that I know a little bit about what I'm talking about regarding depression, not only from my own personal experiences, but also because of my education. One of the symptoms of depression is hopelessness. Like, a person just feels hopeless about whatever's going on in their life. They don't have hope. They don't have like a hope for the future, or a hope to do this, or hope to do anything in their lives. Another thing is like they don't have any interest in the things that they once had interest in. So say if say if you like going to the movies, or like going to the clubs, or like going over to your family members and friends' houses to play cards and to have fun. Well, if you're in a depressed state, you don't have the same desire to do those things anymore. You just like, it's like, oh, I don't feel like doing it. I don't want to do it, or whatever. What else? You can feel sad. You can sometimes cry at the drop of a hat for no apparent reason at all. It's just a really, really low, depressed state.
Or in other terms, because I've known like recent, events in my life that I knew I was going through a depressed state, but I wasn't sad. I was overly happy. I was overly partying. I was overly not focused on things that I need to be focused on. I was trying to distract myself from reality. And that's a big part of depression. A lot of people use alcoholism, like we was talking about, use drugs, things to get away from reality, which is, you have to look, like you said earlier, beyond people's smiles sometimes. If you really want to know what somebody's going through, don't judge the book by the cover, because people can pretend to be whatever they want you to see. So I feel like, just the sad way to be depressed. A lot of us do, teenagers rebel against their parents, like you were saying, you did it at 16. So I mean, depression can start at that age when you're done from school. And
sexual orientation, like I said. And a whole host of things. Sometimes, like, kids don't fit in with other children, and so they become depressed because of that. Sometimes their parents place unrealistic expectations on them, and they become depressed because of that. So yeah, depression is not a disorder, if you will, that only affects adults. Children are sometimes affected by depression as well, as was in my own case, as well as millions of other American children. So
is depression okay? Is it okay for, because life is going to be life. Death comes, bad events come in our lives, bad situations, loss of jobs. Is depression the normal reaction to things when your life is riled up or changed, suddenly, or things not going your way? Is depression okay? I don't want to say that it's okay, but what I will say that is, as you said, because life does happen, it's a natural part of living. And in fact, I was just reading an assignment for my class the other day, and what they were talking about was post-traumatic stress disorder. So what that is, PTSD as it's called, is when a person experiences an unnatural event, like, for example, when these persons were in the war over in Iraq, right? And when they come home, they've experienced something that you don't always experience, seeing people die and at the drop of a hat and all that. So they come back, and it's like they're expected to just like get back into society rather easily. Well, oftentimes what happens with that is, one of the things that counselors tell them is that
what you experience is an abnormal event. So if you're having mild emotions or bad emotions or negative feelings about what you experience, is quite natural. I mean, you would, if your house has been burned down to the ground and you lost all your possessions, it's natural for you to feel depressed and sad and angry and lonely and all these other kind of different feelings that you feel. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that, so while it's not like okay, it is a part of natural living. Another one of the things that I read just the other day is that many of us are going to have many episodes of depression throughout our lives. But what I feel like is this, which is one of the reasons why I wanted us to do this show, is because I want us to recognize that although it's somewhat natural to experience depression, we don't have to experience it alone. One of the true blessings that I have in my life, and I mean a real blessing, is I have Tariq as a friend. And I mean, he's a good friend. He has good sound judgment, and I'm a talker, so whenever I'm going through something in life, I express what's on my mind. I don't like hold my feelings in or whatever, and I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to necessarily do, like, if I'm going through something with one of my partners, I'm going to tell Tariq, I'm like, this is what's going on. Do you think this is crazy, or do you think this is crazy? I'll say it in a minute. And Kel, which, as I said before, is my cousin and also one of my best friends. I tell her in a minute, I talk to her, she's a valuable source for me. Now, many of us don't always have people who are really good thinkers and who offer a sound judgment, as I do in Tariq and my friend Sharon and my friend Kel. And so we sometimes need to go outside of our family members and our friends, and that's why I encourage people to seek the help of a mental health therapist. We should not feel ashamed about being depressed, feeling depressed, or any other kind of mental disorder that we're going through. We should feel comfortable in seeking the help of a mental health therapist. One of the things that I oftentimes tell people, and I know I'm being long-winded, I just want to get this point out. One of the things that I always tell people is that...
Get it out.
is that we need to show the same amount of care to our minds that we show or should show to our bodies or our teeth, if you will, our oral hygiene. So what I mean by that is just how you go to the doctor every 6 months for a physical checkup to make sure you don't have cancer, make sure your heart is working properly, make sure you don't have high blood pressure and all these other ailments that sometimes will fall upon us. We should do the same thing with our minds. We should have a mental health checkup. There is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with checking to see like if something is okay upstairs in our minds. There's nothing wrong with it, because when you think about life, piggybacking what Tariq had said earlier, is that we go through so much in life. We go through several relationships, whether romantic or friendships or familiar relationships. We go through the ups and downs of work environments, which is taxing on our minds. Some of us have children, and our children are disorderly or wayward children, and so we have to deal with that. Some of us are single parents. Some of us have just a whole array of issues in our lives and stuff. And all of that stuff definitely, as doctors tell you these days, affects our physical selves, but it also affects our mental selves. And so to go to a therapist and say, look, this is what's going on with me, I can't handle it, this is getting on my nerves, I'm crying all the time, I'm feeling this kind of way, is perfectly natural. We shouldn't be ashamed to seek a mental health practitioner. We're not ashamed if like our toe hurts, or if our chest hurts or whatever. We're not ashamed to go to a doctor to see about that, so we shouldn't be ashamed to see a mental health therapist or practitioner.
I mean, I think that depression to help with depression, the first is admitting that you could be depressed, to be able to express that something's not right, that you're feeling down, that I need to talk to someone. And I think that's the only way you can actually deal with depression, because most people don't want to accept the fact that something's wrong, that you are depressed. It's okay to accept that you're depressed, because then I think you can deal with it. You know, like you said, seek help, talk about it, try to find out, how to get back to your normal state of mind. So as long as you're in denial about being depressed, or in denial about your life circumstances, then you will never get the help that you need. You will never recover or, become better. So I think, my mom was if you know my mother, she's always been an avid, you need to go, you need to go see somebody. You need to talk about it. You need to go, you need to use your insurance or get you a counselor or something. When you pay insurance, you might as well go, you get some mental health. And so because mental health in her life is real. Mental health in our family is real. Mental health is real, period. A lot of people like to, deny it. But if you really think about it, like, Chris, what you're saying, it's just as important. Your mind is the glue of everything, for you to recover physically, you have to mentally get through it first. And so if you're not stable in your mind, then your life won't be stable. But a lot of people don't want to seek help in their mind first. So depression, I think everybody experiences it, if not a lot of the times. It's more so dealing with it and accepting it and trying to find the solutions, you know, have people, like you said, to talk to. If you have important people in your family, talk to them, express how you feel, let them know I'm depressed. If you can admit that first, you can be, you can be anti-depressed, but you can't get better if you don't admit what you're going through now. And like you said, there's nothing wrong. I mean, people joke about going to see the shrink on TV or joke about being a loony bin, but it's 2012. Yeah. Like, we should, I mean, people with the money is going to see shrinks and going to see the doctor. So if you got insurance, if you, check into that, and use it, it's there. There's nothing wrong with taking a 6-month physical and getting a 6-month mental physical. Right. Just talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. I mean, because let it out. People don't want to let it out, but you have to let it out. Depression does not have to become you. You can overcome it. So definitely be real with yourself first, and I think you can get through depression easier.
I agree. One of the other things that I was thinking about is that I oftentimes tell people that there is, to me, and I don't have like a set age on this, I've said 30, like, to me, is like the optimum age whereby a person should have a mental health checkup. For other persons, because by 30, you've experienced so much in life. You've had a few boyfriends or girlfriends that you done broke up with and everything. You've experienced death by that time. Jobs, several jobs that you got fired from, that you quit, that whatever's going on. Financial problems, children. Some of us have children and everything by that time, and so you've experienced quite a bit in life already. And so to get a mental health checkup is like I said, at 30 is really, really ideal. Sometimes for some people it's before then, which is my second thought, is that even if, what Tariq had said before is he said that to get yourself back to normal. Well, some of us never have a state of normalcy, if you will, or normalcy. I think they call it normalcy, Normalcy. We don't know what that is because our lives have always been chaotic. So, like, for instance, a person who was sexually abused as a child, well, if you're sexually abused, and if any of you all know anything about sexual abuse, well, you carry the scars of sexual abuse with you for most of your life. And so if you're 18, 19, 20, or 25, or 30, I mean, you really don't know what it's like to have a normal, and I'm saying normal, quote unquote normal, because, that's subjective. We don't really have a term for what normal is because we're all individuals. But we don't know what a normal state of mind is. And so for some of us, seeing a mental health therapist, you may need to see one at 15 or 20 or 25, long before you're 30 years of age, so that you can combat the scars of what transpired to you in your childhood. And that's another point that I wanted to make, is that what I found, I say this to Tariq all the time, is that, and I shouldn't say it because it's negative, but I'm going to reword it and say it in a more professional way, is that here in Atlanta, there are a lot of men, specifically gay men, who are who have mental health issues. And I think part of that comes from their environment, because this is a heterosexual society, and then heterosexual society, I'm not singling out anyone, obviously, but as a whole makes homosexuals feel bad about being themselves. And so in turn, the homosexual internalizes this fear or this non-acceptance or unacceptance, and it creates issues within themselves and regarding themselves. They're not comfortable being in their own shoes, if you will. So what I say is that for those persons as well as the persons who were abused as a child, whether sexually or physically or just teased. Sometimes I've known people who were bullied as a kid or teased as a child. They'll carry that all the way into their 20s and 30s and stuff. Like, yeah, I remember when he pushed me down when I was 7 years old, and I remember when she pulled my... Yeah, and I'm like... Bullies themselves. Exactly. And so they need to deal with that effectively. And sometimes you can't deal with that in your own mind. You need to be able... Exactly. You need a mental health therapist to say, well, listen, maybe we can work through that. We can show you some other ways to deal with your situation or deal with your anger from when you were 7 years old. And so that's my point. I just feel like we should always seek mental health. It's a great thing. I want to shed light on this as well. Because what we've talked about is depression, which is, I said, something I've wrestled with since I was a child. There are other mental disorders as well. Like I said, schizophrenia, and for you all that don't know what schizophrenia is, it's what my dad told me some years ago is a thought disorder. So oftentimes, or sometimes I should say, a person who's schizophrenic is they're not fully aware of what's going on in everyday life. It's a form of psychosis, if you will. They're kind of out of touch with reality. There is medication now that's given to persons who are schizophrenic to treat schizophrenia. There's also bipolar disorder. That's a real big thing. Everybody's saying, oh, she bipolar, or he bipolar, and most times these persons aren't bipolar. Even mental health therapists are telling people and giving them medication saying that they're bipolar, when in fact they're not bipolar. This is what bipolar is. Bipolar, bi means two, and polar means opposites, ends. So for a person who's bipolar, you have to experience two extremes in your mind. So that means you have to be depressed on one end and then experience a form of elation on the other end. And now let me tell you what this is, because I know some people are still saying, oh yeah, that's what she is and that's what he is. They bipolar. No, it's still not. This is what it is. When you're depressed, I mean, this person, the person who truly suffers from bipolar disorder, they are like so depressed that all they see is black. Everything is dark. Oh my God, life is so awful. I can't handle this. I just want to die. And she's it's dark. Everything is dark. Now, the exact opposite of that, obviously, is not when some people, like this one person told me just the other week that this woman suffered from bipolar disorder because she told them that she suffered from bipolar disorder because she was upset. She got upset and she cussed out her instructor. That's not bipolar. Now that might be another disorder. It's another mood disorder, but it is not bipolar disorder. Just getting upset like, mother effer, you ain't this and you ain't gonna tell. That's just not an indication of bipolar disorder. No, Tariq is
You start snapping on folks for no reason.
No, that's not Tariq, or that's not bipolar disorder. But so the opposite of being in the lows or the thresholds or the gutter of depression is what? What's the opposite of it to you?
Being in euphoria,
right.
Out of reality, like you said, totally the opposite. So you think everything is perfect,
yes.
and everything is right.
Exactly.
And what you're doing is, you
like,
know.
So they say, oh, I just love life. Oh, I just can't wait. Every day I wake up and the sun shines and oh my God, that's the opposite of depression, and that's how they are. It's like a complete opposite extreme. So they go on.
But it's still two forms of depression. I mean, bipolar is a depression.
It is. It's a mood disorder. Yeah, exactly.
Because to go from one extreme to the other, I mean, it's very loosely based. A lot of people use it to try to describe, one and the other. You know what I'm saying? And so, do you think it always has to be to that extreme to be considered bipolarism?
It is.
You think it to that extreme? So a lot of people is using it very loosely, and
right.
doctors just trying to get money off of prescriptions and stuff like that, because it could just be a mild form of depression. So what you're saying, bipolarism is an extreme form of depression, and so it's not to be. You might just be depressed or have what you call that. Mood issues and stuff like that. That's not necessarily bipolarism.
Right. See, depression is classified as a mood disorder, period. But specifically, like in order to suffer from bipolar disorder, you have to have those two extremes to exist. Now, there are other forms of depression, like there's major depression, there's minor depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, that's considered a form of depression, postpartum depression. When a woman has her child and she experiences some form of depression afterwards, that's another form of depression. So there's several kinds of depression, and not just one. So the person who, generically people are saying is suffering from bipolar, they can very well suffer from a mood disorder, but typically it's not bipolar. Right?
Which makes sense. It's just people like to say it because we know about it. It's an easy clinical term, right. Bipolar. Oh, I can say that. And I can call somebody that,
right.
So it's easier to say. So why not, to try to give somebody a label.
Right. And so my other thought is this. The reason why I mentioned these other disorders is because I wanted to educate you all, to enlighten you all on what the other disorders are. But also I wanted to hopefully foster in you all an empathy, or I guess possibly even a sympathy for these persons, because just like and this is where some of the stigma with mental disorders come in, is that people are ashamed to have these ashamed of having these disorders because society says that, you know, they're crazy, something's wrong with them, and all this other kind of stuff. Well, with mental illness, oftentimes it's like a physical illness. Sometimes you're genetically predisposed to get it, which means like it's in your family and you have there's nothing you can do about it. Just like diabetes, like if your mother or father is diabetic, then chances are you'll be diabetic. Or if you have sickle cell anemia in your family, then there's chances that you'll be sick.
Okay, question with that. So is it physically that it's going to be inherited to you because of it, or is it taught? So that's what so basically, if your mother suffered through depression and your grandmother suffered from depression, is it physically, you know, from a mental makeup, like chemically and stuff like that, you're going to suffer from depression? Or is it more so you've been taught, or you know what I'm saying, it's a norm in your family, so of course you're going to be handed it down to, or is it a mix of both?
See, there's a thing that's what Tariq is talking about is like a really big issue in social services circles. It's like the nurture based versus the nature debate. So nature being you're genetically predisposed to get this, and then nurture is what your environment, you learn from your environment.
Is nature.
Sometimes it is like, just like what I was saying about sickle cell or diabetes or heart disease, sometimes with mental illness, it can be passed on genetically, and so you just get it genetically. In other instances, you can learn it from your environment, from the persons around you. I'll say this.
So which one do you think? Like, majority of Americans, do you think we are a nature society dealing with depression, or you think most of it is nurtured?
You know, it's hard to say. One of the things before we started this show, before we actually started recording, I had Googled how many Americans suffer from mental illness, and I think the number I came up with was 55 million Americans suffer from mental illness. So,
that's how you have.
Oh no, so it's not. And no, but again, those are the persons who are diagnosed. So it's a lot of other people who aren't diagnosed and who don't even seek mental health treatment and stuff to know that they are in fact suffering from mental disorders or illnesses. I really don't know. I like to say that it's probably 50-50. I think that life brings about like depressed situations. As I said, I don't know. My grandmother was depressed. I think that my mother may suffer from a form of depression. But I think in part it's because of their lives. My grandmother was, as I said, the matriarch of our family. She had 7 children. She had issues within her marriage. She had issues with her kids because she had birthed all these children, and mothers particularly, and I'm not discounting the love and affection that fathers feel for their children, but mothers oftentimes carry the brunt of the family dynamics and pushing the family forward. So if the children, in her case, all 7 of her children were chemically dependent, well, that'll make you depressed. That'll make you want to do a whole bunch of different things. And so I understood her depression, and then it was money issues and everything. She didn't have enough money to go around to pay her own bills to pay. She was helping her children, as I said, who were chemically dependent. So that was her reason for being depressed. I don't think that her depression was a genetic depression, if you will. And
so do you think it's in your family? Since you said your mother, your grandmother, your mother, you, so you feel like y'all form a depression, minor or major? I would consider minor. Well, I don't know. You know, the whole act with the pills, that might have been a major, situation, major time in your life. So you think your family is more of a nurture, it's life. You don't think that, it's like a...
Right. So in closing, what I would do is I would like to encourage any person who is suffering from any kind of mental disorder to seek the help of a mental health professional. You don't have to be ashamed about what you're going through. It's commonplace in a world like ours today. I mean, we're going through so many things, period, just living life, period. The situations, as I said, with the war in Iraq and the World Trade Center bombing, all those different things affect our minds and how we live our lives. So it's nothing to be ashamed about if you're struggling with living life. It's perfectly natural, in fact.
And for me, I'm, piggyback off what he said. If you're going through depression, admit it, deal with it. There's no reason to feel like you're different than anybody else, like it's just too much for you to handle. It's just a moment, it's a state, it can change, it can get better. You don't have to do it alone. Seek help from friends, family, close ones, and if you need to, which we strongly suggest, medically, go find someone to talk to, Like I was saying, the insurance is out there. People have the capabilities to get help. They're just not aware of it. So take mental health serious as anything else. But before we close, I would also like to send our condolences and prayers out to a dear friend of ours, Lincoln Jude. He lost his sister and his nephew last night, and he's going through a lot, and he's a big part of the show and a big part of, you know, a lot of things in Chris' career. So we'd like to send, you know, our condolences out to him and tell him that it's okay, and, you know, we love him, and stay strong.
Right.
So make sure you hit us up on Facebook.com, LoveChild3. Subscribe. Our guys are watching, but we need you to subscribe so YouTube know that we're getting people interested in what we're talking about.
Oh, and again, to when what Tariq says about the subscribe, just so you all know, when you're subscribing to our video, you're not paying for anything. It's a free subscription. So just subscribe. I don't know exactly how you do it, but you subscribe.
Just put subscribe. Log on to your YouTube account and you subscribe to the Love Child YouTube channel, and that lets people know, as far as the YouTube and people around the world, that people are interested in what we have to talk about. So.
And it's Love's Child 3 on YouTube, as well as I believe Facebook. I think that's our name on Facebook as well.
It's Love Child on Facebook.
Okay. But and also please post your questions and your comments on Facebook as well. So, or even I don't know if you can do it on YouTube, right?
Yeah, you can. There's parts where you put
That's
comments.
right. That's right. So make sure you do that so that we know that either you like what we're doing, you don't like what we're doing. There's some things you feel like we should add. Anything. Just post your thoughts. And we appreciate them. We will read them. Thanks so much. Take care.
Holla.